Hello everyone, my name is Aaron and this is the Game Day Hour. Welcome back to another playoff video, and we are here in the AFC and the NFC Championship. Now, we've gone through 2 rounds, there's 4 teams left. What we're going to be doing in today's episode is going to be a pretty short one. We're going to be taking a look at the 4 teams left remaining and seeing who is making it to Super Bowl 58. After this, there will be one more episode left, and that will be the Super Bowl episode. And then we're going to be moving on to season 2, restarting the NFL season. Basically, how my seasons work for podcasting is the first or the second or future seasons end after the Super Bowl. So that's just a good notion. So start after the Super Bowl at the beginning, and then we end once the Super Bowl is done, and then restart again. So there's one more episode left of this first season, and then time to move on. But be prepared for that episode. Anyways, let's get started. By the way, early question before we get started. How does this Patrick Mahomes jersey look? Honestly, I just got this jersey yesterday, and it feels nice. It actually fits my size. It's just a large. And it looks amazing. I wanted to get either him or Lamar Jackson. I ended up getting Patrick Mahomes because the Jackson jersey I wanted was not there. I was going to get a white Patrick Mahomes jersey, but then they didn't have one, and this was the only one they had. It actually looks great, so I think I made a good purchase here. I hope to get more jerseys in the future, but yeah, I just want to talk about that first. Anyways, let's get to the championship games. The first championship game we're going to be looking at is the AFC Championship between the number 3 Kansas City Chiefs and the number 1 Baltimore Ravens. Now, this is a matchup I think a lot of us are looking forward to, the quarterback battle between Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson, who is on MVP tear right now. Before we get to the picks, let's kind of take a look back at both these teams. First off, let's look at the Kansas City Chiefs. They went 11-6 this year, and the biggest thing that anyone talked about was missing Tyreek Hill in this wide receiver core, dropping passes, running the wrong routes, running the routes incorrectly, and the penalties, the biggest of them all being the Kadarius Toney offsides that ruined their chances of winning against the Bills. There were so many questions about that wide receiver core going into the playoffs, and so far they played well. Their first game, they played against Miami Dolphins in -7, felt like -27 degrees. Water bottles were freezing. Andy Reid's beard is all frozen over. It looks like an icicle beard. And just the wind chills hit differently. It did not feel good. But they ended up winning that game 26-7 because for a few reasons. One, Miami was on a downslope. They were not doing well, and obviously they're not playing in their natural habitat of Miami, so that hurt them. And Kansas City was clicking on all cylinders. The underrated player for this team that not many people talk about in comparison to Patrick Mahomes or Travis Kelce is Isaiah Pacheco, who was on my fantasy team this year. Loved him. I'd pick him again. I didn't pick him. I got him in a trade, but I would pick him in the future because he's definitely worth it with how the Chiefs are looking right now. But I was very impressed with that Miami game, albeit I didn't get to see a lot because it was on Peacock and I couldn't watch it at first, but I got to see the second half, and the Chiefs looked great. And then they go off to Buffalo, their first playoff road game under Patrick Mahomes. And Patrick Mahomes played pretty well, exceedingly well. Obviously, Josh Allen, I thought, statistically played a little bit better, but obviously the Chiefs pulled out 27-24. The Bills missed a crucial field goal that would have tied it and potentially sent it to overtime. But then again, Patrick Mahomes could just go down the field and kick his own field goal. Whatever. So the Chiefs, they jumped that hurdle, so they looked great. Now they're on the road again, this time at Baltimore, who ended their season off 13-4, looked like the best team in football for the majority of the year. Obviously, the Niners looked better until that game, but Lamar Jackson was just very hidden in the MVP talks, and then after a few bad games from Dak Prescott, Brock Purdy, and Tua, Lamar Jackson has reached the top and is potentially going to win his second MVP. Now, can he win this game against the Chiefs? Well, let's see. He only played one game because he got the number one seed in the playoffs, and in that game, he looked spectacular. Four total touchdowns against the Texans. He looked unstoppable, and he honestly was giving me the very vintage Michael Vick highlights that I used to see back in the day. And it's just so crazy to see just that how the next player that steps up. Obviously, Randall Cunningham, Michael Vick. Now it's Lamar Jackson, and it just feels so good to see those type of players in the league. Jackson is a quarterback that can win the Super Bowl. I believe it in my heart that he can. So now it just leaves to the picks. Do I trust Patrick Mahomes? 6 AFC championship games, by the way. Or do I trust this Baltimore Ravens team? Well, it comes down to each minor facet of the game. Coaching is roughly the same. I think Andy Reid and John Harbaugh are ready. I think the quarterbacks are very similar in their success. The question is, which defense is going to stand up? The Ravens look impenetrable as far as being able to pass the ball around, move it around. They almost look like a brick wall. And the Chiefs defense also looks great, but secondary wise, they are exposable in comparison to Baltimore, who I don't think is as exposable. And because of defense, because of the wide receiver cores, I think Patrick Mahomes is going to take an L here. I don't think the Chiefs defense has an answer for Lamar Jackson, especially in Baltimore. So it's going to be a tough game, close one. I'm going to say the Ravens win this one 31-24, and the Ravens move on to Super Bowl 58. And then the last game, the number 3 Detroit Lions versus the number 1 San Francisco 49ers. The 3s and the 1s. How about that? By the way, before I get into this, I realized that I did the TikTok and all my picks on TikTok. So if you didn't see that, go to TikTok. You'll see every single pick I made for the divisional rounds. I went 4-0. I got all the picks right. I even picked Kansas City over Buffalo, and that's because I had a feeling. I had a feeling Kansas City was going to win, and they did. But how about Detroit? I mean, this year they looked amazing. Coach Campbell, he's a beast, and he's the perfect guy for that Detroit job. And he's also the coach of the year, in my opinion. I don't think it's Stefanski, even though he got to the playoffs with 4 quarterbacks. I have to give it to Campbell, 3rd seed, and is now in the NFC Championship. But let's take a look back at the Lions. They went 12-5. They had some signature wins along the way. Their biggest being in Week 1, the first game of the year against the Kansas City Chiefs, beating Patrick Mahomes in Arrowhead. That was a big deal for them. But they've also had some tough losses this year. I mean, the loss to the Bears wasn't great, to the Packers on Thanksgiving, and roughly to the Ravens. I mean, they had some games where they just did not look complete. They looked like the Dallas Cowboys at some point. And as a Cowboys fan, I could say that. We look terrible. But when the Lions are great, they're great. And you can tell by their toughness. On offense, Jared Goff looks like the franchise quarterback with great tight end wide receiver combo with Amon-Ra St. Brown and Sam Laporta, with potentially the best backfield, David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, the rookie. I'm pretty sure have had over 600 yards rushing each, which not that easy to do, but maybe even 800. I have to look back at the stats. Point is, they have the best running back core in all of football. And then defensively, they're tough. They're really, really tough. Good secondary, strong up front with Aiden Hutchinson and more. I mean, they look like a complete team with a complete head coach. And in the playoffs this year, as I went, very tough game against the Rams, won 24-23. Tough, emotional, but Detroit gets their first win in 32 years. And then you also have the game against Tampa Bay, another tough game. Defense looked great despite a few drives where they just looked absolutely slashed by Tampa Bay's pass game. But other than that, offense clicked very well. Detroit played incredibly well and ended up beating Tampa Bay 31-23. And now they're here. Their first NFC Championship game since, I believe, 1991, if I'm not mistaken. But still, that's a long time coming, and Detroit needed it. with what's going on right now. Tires don't look great going into this next season, and the Pistons are atrocious. There's probably a worse word for that, but I can't find it right now. The point is, Detroit got their team, and it was very much well needed. But here's their first road game, and it's to the team that I said would win the Super Bowl this year at the beginning of the season, the San Francisco 49ers. So, big year for the 49ers. When they're fully healthy, this is probably the most dominant team in all of football, despite one game, and that was against the Baltimore Ravens. But they lost 5 games. One of them, they sat down all their players week 18. Lost to the Ravens pretty bad. They had losses to the Browns, to the Vikings, and the Bengals. So against the AFC this year, they did not look great. But then they got those big games. 42-19 at Philadelphia. 42-10 against Dallas. 34-3 against Jacksonville. They've had games where they played tough opponents and absolutely annihilated them. And when you look at their team, they're stacked on all ends. Brock Purdy is a good quarterback for that system. Christian McCaffrey is the best running back in football. Debo and Ayuk make up one of the best receiving corps in all of football. And then, of course, George Kittle and Kyle Juszczyk and that offensive line led by Trent Williams. Their offense is complete. And then on defense, Nick Bosa on the D-line, Fred Warner in the back. They got Chris Young from the Washington Commanders. You got Drake Greenlaw, who had one of the most important interceptions in the last game against the Packers. We'll get to that in a second. And then out in the secondary, Tre'Davious Ward and many others. This team is complete. When they're fully healthy, I don't think anybody can really beat a Kyle Shanahan team. That means fully healthy. Obviously, they won against the Packers 24-21, but they lost Deebo Samuel in that game, and they did not look great. But they won in a nitty-gritty game, which is something that they haven't been able to do when missing some players. So that win was important, and now they get to host the NFC Championship game against Detroit, who looks hot at the right time. The key component to this game, and we're getting to the picks now, the key component is Deebo Samuel healthy? Samuel went out in the first drive and never came back. They still won, but from what reports are telling me, it seems like Deebo Samuel is going to play Sunday. People say he doesn't have the fracture in his shoulder, which is good. Good thing he doesn't have that. Some people says he feels okay, feels great, and he's ready to go. So the Niners will most likely have their fully complete team ready to go. But Detroit again, they're gritty. They are tough. So it begs the question, is Detroit prepared to play in this hostile environment in San Francisco against debatably the best team in football? I love Dan Campbell. I love what he's done with Detroit. But I'm actually going to have to say no. I think the San Francisco 49ers will win, albeit a close game, one possession. But I think the Niners pull this one out. Their defense is going to make some important stops. The linebacker core is going to play a big portion of the game. Greenlaw and, of course, Fred Warner. And they're going to make some big offensive plays. Deebo Samuel is going to be a difference maker. George Kittle is going to get going. Of course, McCaffrey is going to do his thing. And as long as Brock Purdy doesn't turn the ball over, it's a wrap. The 49ers have this game. And they will go to Super Bowl 58 to face the Baltimore Ravens. That's my predictions. And I feel very confident about them. Obviously, these two games are going to be amazing. We're going to have some great games. Be prepared for some good football this weekend. And that'll do it for today's episode. Yeah, there's no Q&A. There won't be a Q&A for the next episode either. But starting for season 2, I'm going to try asking for Q&As. So be prepared on TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram for those Q&As. And if you have any questions, they don't have to even be sports related. Just nothing controversial. That's all I ask. Nothing that will seem like it could stir people the wrong way or make me think you're asking a question that's looking for a confrontational answer. None of that. But if you wanted to ask like favorite movies, favorite stuff, go for it. I mean, I'll be down to answer whatever, and of course, sports questions too. So yeah, with that said, go follow me on all my social media, subscribe here on the Game Day Hour, go to Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, which I'm starting to do a lot more TikTok action. It's fun. If you haven't been on TikTok yet, it's actually very fun to do. And yeah, that's it for the episode. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you guys have enjoyed the episodes I've released throughout the year. I will get back to the fantasy football when it's time, and obviously some fun episodes here and there. But yeah, that'll do it for today. Hope you guys have a great day. Take care, and goodbye.